Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Point of TV channel. Now, some quick things before we get into our intro. Please watch the video to the very end and do not forget to like, comment, subscribe. There will be cussing and profanity. If that's not your cup of tea, this channel is not for you. Thirdly, I will be giving my honest opinion about the episode and the show as a whole. And lastly, yes, there will be talk about other TV shows and the Charm reboot from what I can remember from watching it way back when. In in a sense of not comparing it to Charm, but in a sense of things I wish they had not done in that show that didn't need to change. So without further ado, let's get to our intro. Welcome everyone. I am your host, the Queen herself, and you are the Prince and Princess. You're either a subscriber or you are a viewer. Either way, welcome. Today we're talking about Charm Season 1, Episode 2. I've got you. I've gotten under your skin. So the episode starts with the girls at Quake. Piper is upset because the French guy that was training her actually ended up quitting to open his own restaurant. So now she has to manage Quake instead of being a chef. Something that she wanted to do at this job, not necessarily run the place. Phoebe and Prue are also in this episode. Well, Prue isn't with them. Phoebe, however, is at Quake with Piper when Piper is saying this, and she ends up saying goodbye to Brittany along with Piper, their friend Brittany Reynolds, who apparently has a tattoo of an angel on her right arm. She got it from Tahiti because she can't get it in America because it's illegal. So as she's leaving, Phoebe ends up having a premonition of some random guy named Alan who wants to buy her a martini, something she can't control. Piper reminds her that they're not supposed to use her powers for personal gain because, what happens if Prue finds out. Phoebe obviously goes for it and ends up leaving with the guy, while Brittany is kidnapped while sitting in her car by a mysterious figure. This mysterious figure is our demon of the week. His name is Javna. More on him in the review. So they end up going home later on the night because it's the next morning. Before that happens, we see that Prue ended up going on a date with Andy, where it's revealed that yes, they did date in high school. And they end up having sex on the first date. Well, Prue tried to sneak out when Annie's alarm tries to go off, and she's using her powers to throw his clock out of the window. She leaves without saying goodbye. So obviously, while they're at home, Piper is watching a Salem's Witch Trial documentary that's talking about witches being evil and things like that, and how witches were burned in the Salem witch trials. She also finds out later on that a woman tried to enter the church, where she ended up getting struck by lightning, and that was a sign that God did not want the evil witch to open the gates of the church and enter in with her evil. A little bit on that too in the review. Prue ends up getting upset with Phoebe about using her powers for personal gain and this Alan guy. Phoebe says she cannot control it. It just happens. Prue tries to rope Piper into the middle, but Piper says she does not want to be in the middle, but Prue reminds her that she was born in the middle. Phoebe and Prue obviously get nowhere. Phoebe even says that what she did with Alan, she's not ashamed of what happened because the topic of Andy does come up in this conversation. And Prue says, well, FYI, I'm not ashamed of anything I did either because obviously they're both grown ass adults. Now, they eventually do find out that Brittany is missing and that her fiance is looking for her, but they can't find her. They did walk past her at one scene in the episode and did not recognize her. Obviously, she's an elderly woman at this point because Javna is a demon that sucks the youth of women. And they can only recognize her from her angel tattoo. Well, Piper obviously ends up going to the church where she talks to the pastor of that said church that they know of. That is not the only pastor of that church. We actually gonna see multiple pastors, but he and her talk, and they talk about the Salem witch trial, stuff like that, and by based off of his religion, he tells her the things that he believes and what he perceives as right and wrong and what he has understood from the words of the Bible concerning that situation, which freaks Piper out even more. And that wasn't his intention. Because he did say that it's technically, he tries to technically say that it's not 100% true about the Salem witch trials, so she has nothing to worry about. Well, she tries walking to the church and then she hears a sound of thunder. So she decides not to go in. Well, meanwhile, that's happening. Prue is looking for a new job. She's going to start working at Buckland's. Andy ends up trying to talk to her. He tried to talk to her earlier about like what happened that day and her leaving and all that. And she's giving him the runaround and being awkward with him. Well, she ends up talking to him about her job and talking bad about the place and the boss that worked there. Unbeknownst to her, the guy that owns the place is standing right next to her. They end up having the interview where he apparently makes a snide comment about what she was saying in the elevator, which she would have been late if she had not already used her powers to get to her interview quicker. Well, she ends up getting upset with Rex, who she says was rude for like eavesdropping on a private conversation, and then she tells him all her credentials, and then she leaves. More on that in my view. So Phoebe, in the meanwhile, went out and had apparently was out buying some things where she ran into an elderly couple whose farm was finna go under if they didn't come up with some money. Phoebe ends up touching a lottery ticket where she sees the winning numbers for a $10 million lottery ticket. She says the numbers out loud, but the guy that's selling them don't believe her. Let's pray and hope he does not remember her, because that is a problem. But the early couple, she does tell, and they use those exact numbers. Phoebe gets one too. Um, let's talk about the personal gain thing real quick. If you use your powers for selfish reasons, aka for self gain for yourself, it ends up having repercussions. And we'll talk more on that in the interview. I mean, the review. And Phoebe does not tell Prue and Piper this. We see that Piper obviously is still struggling with this whole witch thing because she's at work freaking out. They're short staffed and everything's very hectic. This is where Phoebe meets Javna, whose human false name is Stefan. He's talking to one woman, and I should mention that earlier in the episode, Phoebe, which is no surprise, has the tendency to attract guys, and sometimes it's the wrong guys, and I think it's what it is due to her birth, because Phoebe was the only one in the family that was born inside of the Charm Manor, which is not a good thing at all. But she not most of the time, but sometimes she will attract demons. So it's obvious that, every guy that Phoebe comes in contact with would fall in love with her. Phoebe is the epitome of love, which is what we find out in the final season. But Javna obviously is attracted to Phoebe because Phoebe does have a somewhat dark side to her. And he doesn't realize that, and neither does she. But she asks him if the woman with him is his girlfriend, and he says no, and she gets upset and leaves. He leaves Phoebe his number, and then tell like her to call him so he can give her a photo shoot, and he goes after the woman. Which, yes, he catches the woman, and he ends up draining the woman's life force, where she's asking and begging him to let her go, calling him Stefan. He says his name is Javna. So they'll they'll find out his true nature soon. But for right now, Phoebe and Piper does talk, and Piper brings up the guy, and when Phoebe tries to turn around and show the guy, he's already gone. And the reason why Javna left is because his hand was turning back old, so he was losing his youth because he has to drain a woman every week to preserve being young. Um, and plus he saw that Andy and Daryl came in. Daryl's full name is Daryl Morris. Ooh. And Andy's full name is Andy Trudeau. That's what we found out in this episode. So, well, we found out Andy's full name in last episode. I just forgot about it. Prue gets there, where her and Phoebe obviously get into an argument over Phoebe's misuse of her powers, over Phoebe being like completely reckless when it comes to men. Her not taking this wish thing seriously. So just like a bunch of random stuff. And what happens is Piper gets so freaked out, she ends up freezing the entire kitchen. But she doesn't freeze everything else. She doesn't have that level of strength yet in her powers. But he realizes that Prue and Phoebe are not frozen because Prue and Phoebe are good witches. And Phoebe correctly and incorrectly says it's because they're witches. Because no, she can only freeze bad witches. She can't freeze good witches. Which that's kind of misconstrued because she can't freeze them because they're good witches. But like any other witch, she can freeze. The only other thing she can't freeze is ghost. So obviously Andy was also in the kitchen and he tried to talk to Prue and he ends up accidentally causing somebody to knock over a bunch of plates when the room is frozen, and Daryl gave him 5 minutes to go talk to Prue because they're investigating the missing women that Javna has been kidnapping. Well, he's been there for 10 minutes. Prue and Phoebe are still arguing where Prue blames Phoebe for what just happened, and Phoebe denies and apparently is shocked at the fact that Prue tried to blame her. They're able to calm Piper down, and the room unfreezes. They get Daryl and Andy to leave. Now, the next day, Piper and Phoebe have a heart-to-heart talk where Piper is looking through the book. And Piper questions whether or not they're good or bad witches. And I'll get more in detail than this in the review. Well, Phoebe says no because Piper has been helping people all her life. So she is basically a good Samaritan. There's no way she can just get witch powers and just automatically turn evil. Piper does truthfully say that they don't know where these powers come from. They don't know what they're supposed to do with them, and they don't even know why they have them. But Phoebe obviously is able to rest assure her a little bit because Piper does go back to the church where she opens the church doors and she walks in and she's not struck by lightning. She's welcome in the church of God. So she isn't evil despite her being a witch. So we'll get more on that topic concerning religion and witches. Um, but she ends up running into the friend that went missing and sees that it's her from her angel tattoo. I forgot the girl's name. So they go back to the manor where Prue ends up at the where Prue's also at the house, and there was a call from Phoebe saying that she went to Stefan's place or she told them this, whatever the case. They know that she's gone. She's not there. Well, before Prue got home, she went and had an interview with Rex and his assistant Hannah, who, spoiler, just getting this out the way, they're demons. Um and are not the real Rex and Hannah. But Prue and them don't know this. So we end up seeing how good her knowledge is of this type of stuff. And she aces the interview. And Hannah tries to get white paint on her to be mischievous, and Prue is able to block it and ends up getting on Hannah's new shoes. So when Rex asks Hannah what he thinks of Prue, she says either she's the luckiest woman in the world or she's a witch. Because obviously they know she's a witch. They were literally sent an assignment to try to kill her. So that's just a put on words. But he did apologize for the original conversation they had about him eavesdropping on her conversation. So, like I said, we're going to talk more on that in the interview. So, when she got home, she talked to Piper, who I believe is the one that told her about Phoebe, or they both have the knowledge of it, had told her that she knows for a fact that this elderly woman is their missing friend. She showed her the angel tattoo. Piper said she asked her a bunch of questions that only she would know. It was pretty vague, but it was convincing. She knows for a fact that that's her. So they're gonna go look in the Book of Shadows where they find out about Javna and the hand of Fatima, and that's their way to banish him. Meanwhile, Phoebe is at Stefan's place. She knocks on the door. He's not answering. She touches the door. She has a premonition. And when she tries to leave, she gets kidnapped by him because he's in her car. Andy and Daryl find out about Stefan as well. They look at the video and see that he left with one of the victims and he was the last person to see her alive. So they're going to that place as well. Well, the friend ends up seeing the address that Phoebe was going to, which probably is how they found out where she was. And she ends up falling to the ground, damn near having a heart attack. They get downstairs where they find her and they see the address, and Piper says this is where Phoebe went to. And this is where the friend says Javna. That's how they know for a fact that Phoebe is in danger. They get there before the police get there. Um, Phoebe's begging Stefan let her go, or whoever he is. He says it's Javna. I'm guessing this dumbass didn't know she was a witch. Because, or at least the charm one. Because by the time he gets to draining Phoebe, Piper and Prue show up. They knock down the door. Prue uses her powers on him, knocking him back. Piper is getting Phoebe free. Jamna uses his powers to try to bring Prue to him, and Phoebe screams at Prue to use the mirror, which she does, which reciprocates the power back into his eyes, because that's the only way he could actually channel his powers. So they use a spell, and they had to say the spell twice, but it's successful, and it required all three of them. They end up defeating him when any of them show up, and they give him the runaround about why he can't find Stefan. And he and Prue walk off to talk. Well, back at Quake, I'm guessing probably getting the hang of things. Their friend and their fiance is alright because we do see her return back to her age with no memory or recollection of what happened. None of these women can remember. But this is where the lottery numbers come up, and Phoebe is like, I won, I won, I won. But then the lottery numbers start disappearing because the personal gain will not let her get the money. So it makes it to where the lottery ticket is blank and non existent. And Prue reminds her that you can't use your powers for personal gain because there are consequences. Phoebe says at least the elderly couple could keep their home, and she's glad she didn't take the task off of that dress. And the episode ends. So now let's get into our review. Spoiler, if you're not into these longer versions of videos, then this is your point to stop watching now, or you could just skip to this point. Well, let's talk about these few things. First of all, in this episode, it is obvious that Piper is having actual realistic doubts. It makes sense that she would question whether they are good or bad witches. In the sense of this whole witch thing with religion, or aka church and witches, is that in our religions, maybe not all of them, but in the religions that I know of, which is like Christianity, it is a sin to be a witch. There is nothing you could say to a Catholic or a Christian person that will make them convinced that it is not all evil. I do not believe, in my humble opinion, as being another human being who will not judge anybody on their choices because I am not God, that if you are a person that is born with a specific power and it comes from you using witchcraft, or you're just born with it and you just start using witchcraft, that would not exist, let alone you would not have said power if that was not for a reason. We do not understand why this stuff exists. We do not understand what it's for, and we don't know why this type of stuff actually exists for people to use it. It just does. No one understands, but everyone associates witches with devils or demons, which that's meaning that witches are always conceived as being evil and sacrificing children and youth and all that. I think all of that has come from the Salem witch trials because there is no evidence that witches exist, and there is no evidence that they're evil. This is just assumed because some actual natural things back in the Salem witch trials happened. When a woman had a baby and it died, that is because obviously either she was crowning and lost a baby, or she had had a miscarriage and had already lost a baby and did not know it. Or the baby was so breached, or the umbilical cord went over his neck, the baby got strangled to death. So there is not 100% guarantee that that was the fault of those women who got burned. Let her know if you like certain other things, like having a bird sit on your shoulder. That could be just because the damn animal like you. Sometimes birds and stuff do that, even squirrels. And I think that's what it was, a squirrel. They try to say if you had a squirrel on your shoulder, you was a witch. When you got a cold chill, it could have been fucking cold. If there was like a famine going on, the food was dying. There was obviously drought, or it was some kind of divine punishment for something that the people had actually done. So But all that got blamed on witches because people refused to believe that it could have been something that was going on by a higher power, or in a sense, most of that stuff was going on because it was a natural thing that happened and no one had control over those things. So I feel like even today, if you said like a person has visions or a person can move stuff with their mind or a person could control time, or just in the sense that someone actually could heal actual people with their hands or whatever, it's considered as evil or they're considered as witches. Because people will not believe that not everybody that has these powers would use it for bad, and not everybody got these powers because they practice witchcraft. Not all witchcraft is evil. I think the only magic in the world that's evil is voodoo. But that depends on how you use it. But in the sense of just outright being a witch makes you evil, there is no evidence of that, and let alone that's just speculation. The issue with it coming with the church, there is no way to convince anybody of religion that witches are not evil, or at least not all of them are not evil, because they will believe what they want to believe and they will perceive how they want to perceive. There's nothing you can do about that. There is nothing that anyone could say or do to convince anybody or anyone of a religion that it is all right and okay to be a family of or to be with someone that practices magic. But all forms of magic to them is evil, not just dark magic or black magic, is what they say. Now, on Piper's fears, she has every right to feel this way. Obviously, they don't know about the whole gap thing that we found out in season 4, where a witch can only be perceived as evil if she is able to kill an innocent person within a 48-hour period. Now, in Charm's lore, per se, their thing is that yes, this window exists for all witches in their world. Now, for the sake of them being evil, the only way to make them evil is if they marry a demon and have a demonic wedding, and not a wedding within a church or by a priest in God's eyes, but in the sense of evil, aka the devil. They are manipulated into evil, and that they are turned evil through a spell or a potion. Now, in real, you don't have that option. Once you do anything that concerns with black magic or anything that's evil, you are evil. You have committed a form of evil. But in the Charm universe, you have to actually murder an innocent person to either be a bad witch or to become fully a demon. To be fully a demon, you have to kill multiple people. Now, in the Charm reboot, because I warned y'all about this at the beginning of the video, that in their folklore, um demons are not evil because they are people too. And I had mentioned this when I had did this the first time, and I had went off on a tangent. Let me be clear about something. The folklore in the Charm reboot, regardless of how you try to frame it as it being a reboot, meaning it is a fan fiction or it is a some form of inspiration to the show, its lore still is ass, because it does not make sense in a sense of how they try to justify why demons are evil. They basically say that demons were created by witches. First of all, these witches are supposed to be the elders. You remember the elders? The elders are supposed to be fucking dead They're not supposed to be alive. So I don't know how a damn spirit can make a damn demon. But apparently they're not. They're witches. And they're all females. Because in the lore of the Charm reboot, only women can inherit powers. It is a feminist show to the highest order. Um, no, they never allow it to be a male witch born. The Charm original is the only one that allows that. But the reboot won't. Or hadn't had the chance for that matter. Because I had seen a comment from a person saying that if the show had continued on, and I believe they try to say that halfway into the show, it tried to do that, where it was going to be equal to men. It tried too late. I feel like that was something they should have done at the beginning instead of waiting till the end, because they didn't know they were going to get canceled. But either way it go, they're saying that witches made demons. For that to be possible, that has to mean that witches are fucking evil. Like all the elders are evil. They're not innocent. They're not good. They're evil. To say that you have to create something to be evil for it to be evil is fucking garbage. It does not make fucking sense on paper, for one. And it damn sure does not make sense in story wise, because that is devoid of so much fucking logic on how good and evil works. No one is necessarily born evil. People have evil tendencies. People have evil thoughts. People say things that people believe are evil and always remind you that if you say things or you act like that, you're going to hell. First and foremost, no one knows if you're going to heaven and hell. Second of the very all, saying and doing things that others perceive as evil compared to like actually doing evil does not make you 100% evil, because as long as you repent, as long as you can find God, as long as you can cleanse your soul and give yourself to God, you're not necessarily fully evil. To make someone fully evil is a person that cannot have no remorse, willingly takes another person's life or lives, and enjoy doing bad things, right? So in the Charm reboot version, they think that demons were created to be evil and that's why they do evil shit. Like they don't have brains of themselves, right? And they try to do this to try to explain some type of bullshit. I don't know why they do it, but they're obviously trying to justify why people might murder. The Charm reboot was so focused on real life events that they tried to explain these real life events and explain these social issues in the TV show instead of focusing on the show itself. First and foremost, when you murder someone, yes, it does not mean that you're necessarily evil. But if you murder someone and you enjoy it and you keep doing it, you are fucking evil. There is no justification of killing anybody unless it happens in self-defense. Because I'm looking at that for a legal reason. If you're left with no choice where you need to take someone else's life, if it means saving your own because you're afraid for your own life, I understand 100%. I'm not going to judge you, but to just outright kill somebody, no, there's no justification for that. Especially when you want to do it and you actually enjoy doing it. In the Charm reboot, trying to make excuses for that is like saying that people that choose to do evil are not evil because they were made to be evil. I don't know what made them think that makes fucking sense. No one can make somebody evil unless you choose to be. Like, this is a literal fucking issue of a topic even in real life. People believe this about bullying. People believe this about serial killers. People believe this about people who are domestically abusive. People believe this about people who SA folks. They think that if these people have experienced this, have witnessed this, have gone through this, that's why they end up like this. No. All of that shit is by choice. Unless this person has mental illness, there is no excuse for why that person chose that life of a path. There is no excuse for that. The fact that people think there's an excuse for that is a problem, which means that they don't plan on doing anything about it to fix those issues. They just want to let those issues go on and make excuses for them. That's why bullying still exists. That's why people are still being essayed. That is why domestic abuse is still prominent. That is the reason why we have so many unsolved cases in our countries, because we refuse to force accountability on people. We will force accountability on the fucking shit that we shouldn't, which is like other things beside those things. Those things are far worse than anything else other people think are worse. But for those specific things, no, they don't force accountability, and it don't make sense. Now, yeah, the reboot missed me with that one, because absolutely not. When you choose to do evil, you choose to be evil, you are evil. I am sorry. There is no justification of why those demons were the way they were. And the fact they try to do that through a fucking demon is utterly ridiculous. Who apparently would kill an innocent within a damn second, who threatens people, and who apparently kills witches. So I'm very fucking sorry, but no, you're not gonna try to justify that with a legit murderer. And on to Andy and Prue. I understand that Prue doesn't want to rehash like old wounds and whatever, because obviously the whole witch thing and her having to explain that to him. But also, Andy and Prue are at different places in their lives than they were when they dated in high school, which is why I feel like they would have not lasted anyway had the finale not happened, because they necessarily would have been not in game. Her life was too complicated and his life was going to be affected. We're going to see that through Daryl when having to deal with the magic stuff. So, no, absolutely not. Shoot. They probably would have not worked out anyway. It's just like a temporary situation. Now, on to Javna. In my last look at this, I had tried to figure out where Javna was from, but I couldn't. I found it. You have to Google search or just search period what Javna folklore is from. So it's two different things. You have the Indonesian version where it says it's not Javna, it's misspelled, it's Javanese. So like Japanese, so take Japan out of it, or Japa, and put Javna. So it is a possible myth that comes from Hindi Buddhists and Islamic folklore. So basically, that's what I tried to find, which explains why Jamna was banished by Muhammad, because he's probably from Islamic folklore. Now, the other folklore I try to say was, if you look at the V part of his name, is from Savlik folklore, where it means something totally different. It's like the eater of the dead, the souls itself. So it's obviously the first one. So it would possibly be like um Hindi Buddhism or Hindu Buddhism and Islamic, aka Muslim traditions. So it's probably the Muslim tradition because I'm not 100% accurate what Muhammad comes from. Because when I think of Muslim like religion, that's not the name of their god. But yeah, so it's one of those two. It depends on where Muhammad comes from. Is probably what they put in the book, but the Muhammad part might be false. They probably just threw it in there, but it's Javanese, is what it is. It's that first one. You could Google it and do a deeper dive with the AI deep mode to get more on that. So now the personal gain, because we're gonna go back to Charm reboot. I hate they took that shit out of the Charm reboot. I think that's the one thing that's gonna fucking irk me because I wish I could remember everything from all those episodes, but there was so much bullshit. I really can't. But in this original, obviously, when they use their power for selfish means, there is a punishment for it. A punishment, or at least in this sense, a cause and effect where it involves an innocent getting in danger or when they have to go save an innocent because they make the mistake of trying to use their powers for themselves. For the Charm reboot, they decide that there is no such thing as personal gain. It's okay to use your powers for selfish reasons. Now, we do see a little bit of consequences when they use their powers without thinking first. But that's only when they like abuse their powers. It's not used for self gain, it's when they abuse them. But they do try to give them consequences. And some notable things is when Maggie throws a party and she's using a magical potion to make the party look more spooky for Halloween, and it ends up backfiring because it starts acting up because the stuff starts to disappear off of her, the outfit that she's wearing, while Macy is apparently nearly killed by Mayo when she tries to use a very powerful spell without concerning the other two and their powers because she tries to use a quick spell to stop demons. Because she's not taking her power seriously. She's trying to lead the group. Well, Macy ends up getting hurt. Another notable thing is when they had used their powers for personal gain, it ended up backfiring on them. I can't remember which one it was, but it was something in season 1. And it ended up backfiring. I know in the beginning of season 2, this has nothing to do with personal gain, but in season 2, when they tried to ignore them being witches and not really taking it seriously, after what, 3 fucking weeks, they end up getting attacked by a very powerful demon who actually is a half white lighter of Harry, their white lighter, who keeps constantly kicking their asses, that they have to get help from multiple people just to stop him. So yeah, but that has nothing to do with personal gain. That's just laziness. That's just to get back into for their laziness. But compared to the reboot and the original, you kind of can tell when we do meet the elders, when they finally show their faces, that why the elders are there. Because originally I hated the elders in both the original and the reboots. But no reason why I hate them in the reboot because I thought they were going to be just like the ones in the original. But now that I've gotten older, I've realized that the elders were not wrong in how they were doing the charm ones because there was for a reason for that. While in the reboot, The elders in there were the victims. The charmed ones were dicks. Because they weren't even trying to do what the elders asked them to. They were not trying to be equal with them. They kept talking back to them. And it shows. Once the elders are gone, the charmed ones struggle with a lot of shit. And that you realize that with the elders not there, the charmed ones are an actual mess. They don't know how to function. But maybe one day we'll get into that. We're just gonna take that show piece by piece from what I can remember and what the original shows us for me to be able to talk about certain points, because the reboot does like majority of their stuff from the original, but they deviated enough to the point where you can't really pinpoint what's from the original compared to the reboot. Um Now, their friend, who is Brittany, by the way, I'm just now remember her name. She's safe and sound and alive. This was a good episode. Obviously, we see that Prue and Phoebe are still at odds with each other, which is understandable. Prue is still not seeing Phoebe as not her daughter, when it's reality, it's her sister. Uh, I'm glad that Piper finally came to terms with her being a witch. She finally understands. Oh, she's not evil. She's a good witch. She can help people, and I understand it because it was an attack on Piper's character. Because Piper felt that she was never truly good. So to get that rest assurance that she is good, to see that she is not evil, it makes her feel better. She's glad. She cheers and everything else. Because they're all Christians, basically. So they're of the Christian faith. So that's why Piper has that acknowledgement. Um, it goes against her religion, basically, and that's why she was freaking out. That's why I brought up Christian and Catholic, because she's of Christian religion. Now, with Javna, the whole thing with Jeremy saying that demons were looking like regular people and that they look like different forms that we wouldn't imagine. Right now, they're human. Because Javna just looks like a wrinkly old man who can move really good without a cane. So he isn't ugly, right? We ain't got to the ugly ones. Okay, but as the seasons go on, they get uglier. Now I think in season 1 and season 2, the special effects were not great because they did not have the funds. That's why they was not ugly. But when we get to season 3 and on, they getting uglier. And then some of them ain't because they look human. But they will eventually get uglier. Now, let me take that back. We do have one ugly baby. But there's a theory on there, on that baby. And the reason why I'm saying the baby was ugly, because the baby came out looking like Satan. I'm dead ass serious. The baby had horns and everything. So, yeah. It was not human at all. And you could tell. It was literally the spawn of Satan. It was actually Satan himself. It looked exactly like him in a baby form. And like I said, there's a theory on that, and I am going to chime in on that theory when we get to that episode. But without further ado, that's all I got for you guys today. Like I said, if you have gotten to the end of the video, I appreciate you for that, because at least I know you're watching. I'm gonna continue these longer videos so that way I can actually talk more about everything that's going on than just trying to rush and just say what my point of views are, and then in the middle of my recaps go on tangents. But before we leave, I have to mention something real quick about Rex and Hannah. Rex and Hannah, for anyone that does not know, obviously is not the real Rex and Hannah. They killed the original Rex and Hannah. That's why they're pretending to be them. But that's all I got for you guys today. Have a blessed day. Have a wonderful day. And if no one saw you today, I'm telling you, I love you. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. And also, I hope you all enjoy church. Goodbye, guys.